Yeah, Steve backed out. He's not in picture.
Yes,
I was just thinking. I was thinking the same thing.
okay. Well,
Oh my gosh.
and this is not Steve, but welcome. Good Sunday, North American Sunday to everybody. Let me see if I can. What I really want to do. Okay, we're going to share the screen for a moment, just so you can see the true nature of what we have to deal with here today.
That sounds serious.
It is. Here's share. Okay, we've got Brian Hotchkies on tap this morning, and this is his brother, Senior Jose, apparently. And I'd like to know more about this particular picture, Brian.
Well, we were actually on a cruise, and they had a dress-up night on the cruise, and we decided we would go as Mexicans because it was over in the Caribbean where we were cruising. So we decided we'd go as Mexicans, and we got dressed up. There were about 8 of us got dressed up like this, and wandering around the ship and trying to talk Mexican, but not doing a very good job of it.
Okay.
Somebody took a photograph of us, and the person beside me, I have them sort of blocked out because I used this photograph in one of my CD albums that I put out, and I thought I better not go putting somebody else on the album without getting their permission. So I just sort of blocked them out so you can't see who it is. But they were dressed up in a similar way.
Ah. Okay, so that clears up that mystery. From time to time, we'll see other mysteries appear on the screen. So let's talk about this. So, what's your wife's name?
Lorraine.
Lorraine. And how did you meet Lorraine?
She came to the first successful beginners class that I ever ran back in the early 1960s. So her dad brought her along, and she was only a teenager then, as I was. Well, I was in my late teens then, and her dad brought her along. And then after 6 months or so, her dad wanted to learn to dance as well. So he came along and learned. Lorraine became a school teacher, and after a few years of dancing with us, she was married, as I became married as well, with a lady called Wendy, and Lorraine came along to our wedding, and we went along to Lorraine's wedding, and she moved away from the area as a school teacher. She was posted somewhere else, and after about 25 years, both Wendy and I and Lorraine and her husband broke up, and she started coming back dancing again, and we just sort of clicked together, and we've been together ever since. Although I'm still very friendly with my ex, my Wendy. She's now living with our daughter, and I get to see them every week because I go up to Newcastle where they're living and spend a few hours with the family up there. So I get to see Wendy quite frequently. There's no animosity at all between the families. The only reason that we broke up was because we just sort of grew apart with our likes and dislikes, and we decided to go our own way. The only thing that we ever argued about when we did the breakup was who was going to own the wheelbarrow. So, which was very nice. Like we both had the same solicitor and whatever, and it sort of worried him a little bit because he'd never dealt with 2 people that were breaking up with their marriage and had them both as his clients. But it all worked out well. Anyhow, that's what happened with me.
So, who got the wheelbarrow?
I got the wheelbarrow because Wendy didn't
Oh, Brian, you just muted. Oh, wait a minute. Just a minute. Unmute yourself, Brian. I just hit the wrong button.
Right.
There you
Okay.
go.
That's all right.
You-
Yes. The first Christmas that came around after we separated, I gave Wendy a wheelbarrow for Christmas, but not the one that we had. Like it was
No, no,
different.
not the good one, of course.
Well, they were both good. One was new and one was old, and I kept the old one. She got the new one.
Okay. It's kind of something to do with age. Okay, let me just click in here. Okay, so what is the strangest place you've called?
I've called in a cave over in New Zealand. There's a series of caves over there, and one has a fairly large cavity in it. I think it's called the Cathedral Cave, not far from Rotorua, and they've actually had concerts in there. And we had a group of about 50 square dancers touring New Zealand with us, and we were all down in the cave, and we did a dance down in the cave. No music because we didn't have equipment down there, but I called a square dance down in a cave, and I was somewhere, I think it was in Germany, and we had a treetop walk. They had these planks and areas up in the treetops where you could walk around and have a look. And there was one that was big enough for us to dance. So we had a dance up there. And one of the other most special places for me to have called was at the Eiffel Tower in France. I did a weekend for a group over there. Excuse me. And the last session, a morning session, was in the park where the Eiffel Tower is. And it's the only time that I've ever been calling and then saw the Eiffel Tower in my peripheral vision just there. And I forgot what it was I was calling. I was so taken with the fact that I was there calling at the Eiffel Tower in Paris that I just momentarily forgot what was the last thing I called. But very special. I also did a brief call in the Vienna sewers, where they made the movie The Third Man, and I was doing a tour through that with a square dance friend of mine and some other dancers. And in one of the larger openings, I got to call a short bracket for the dancers in the Vienna sewers.
Wow. Well, I guess that just shows folks, if you live long enough, y'all y'all can call in some really strange places. Okay.
I've also called in the Sydney Opera House
Oh, well.
during a visit of Her Majesty, the Queen of England, back in the, I think it was early 1980s, it would have been, when she came over for a visit, and we'd organised a square dance there in case she came into the room, and she came into the room where we were dancing. So I actually got to call in front of the Queen for a little bit.
Sounds good. I'd ask about the most fun dance, but apparently, I think you'd probably say it's too hard to isolate any one dance because they're all so fun.
Indeed.
Yeah.
What I called a really interesting dance over in Sweden, not far from Stockholm. In I think it was a foundry, wasn't it, Hannah, that we were in that day? Very, very interesting. The floor was dirt, and it wasn't flat. It was sort of on a bit of a slope, and the dancing area was sort of L-shaped. but it was really, really remarkable and very memorable. A lot of fun. I did my Indian dance there. Hannah asked me if I would do this Indian dance that I do, Kalija, and I usually don't do it because it's in another foreign language. It's in Choctaw language. And so like a square through is Niki Wee Ha Ha, and then Tool Tool is Do Sa Do, and a Mini Wee He is a swing through. So, I was calling all these strange things. Anyhow, Hannah insisted that I do this, so I put it on. And during my introduction, I said, square dancing is done in English everywhere, apart from at an Indian reservation over in the United States. And after I finished doing this, when I was having a lunch break, they had a guest caller up, one of the locals, and he said, Brian said square dancing is done in English everywhere. He said, I'm going to prove that it can be done in other languages as well. And everybody that was there were Swedish. And so he decided he would call in Swedish. And the floor just had a terrible job trying to work it out, because they had to hear the Swedish word and then translate it back into English to find out what the figure was, really. So it was a bit of a mess, wasn't it, Hannah? But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be. For those who are watching and those who watch on YouTube, we've got so much ground to cover with Brian that he thinks is boring. He thinks he's just a boring, person, has nothing to contribute. And I think that's the farthest thing from the truth you've ever seen. So it just shows you, Brian, how far outside the realm you are of normal, but that's okay. Many of you probably remember Victor Borghi. He had that phonetic punctuation where
Yes.
he'd say a sentence and the period was and a question mark was a sort of a thing. Brian has, he calls by letters. Would you explain that?
Oh, yes. It's just a novelty thing that I do from time to time. How did you know about that?
I can't tell you. I'd have to, I'd have to take your Zoom away.
I tell people that when callers write to each other, that we don't necessarily write everything out in longhand. We use abbreviations. And I do a very easy routine with a singing call, and all it is just head couples right and left through, head ladies chain, side couples right and left through, side ladies chain, everybody join hands and circle left, corner swing and promenade, and then you've got a new partner. So I call that through once, and then I stop the music and explain to the dancers that when callers write to each other, we do shorthand. So if we've got to do it in shorthand, maybe it'd be handy if you learned how to dance in shorthand. So I do the same routine again, put the music on, and I say head couples right and left through is going to be an HCR and LT. And then head ladies chain is an HLC. Side couples right and left through is SCR and LT. So I do this, and then join hands and CL, everybody face your corner, and S. And then one of the punchlines with the thing is everybody P around the ring. So, and at the end of the dance, I usually do something like 4 ladies P in the middle, go girls with enthusiasm. And of course, it usually creates a bit of a giggle amongst the dancers. But that's the shorthand calling: HCR and LT, HLC, SCR and LT, SLC. Everybody join hands and CL, face your corner, and S. And after a while, you can do join hands and CR, R, face your corner, and S. Everybody P around the ring. just a little different.
It is. I used that. I've only had the courage to use it once because after telling the girls to pee in the middle, everybody broke up so much we couldn't continue. But that's a taste of some of Brian's humor for sure. But what got you into square dancing anyhow?
Interesting story. My grandfather was an Anglican minister, so we were a fairly religious family. And I used to go along to church fellowship and socialize with the other teenagers that were there. I was an altar boy for many years, serving up in the sanctuary of the church. And I had a job as an apprentice office machine technician. I was working on mechanical typewriters, adding machines, calculators, accounting machines, and those sort of things. And I didn't have a car back in those days, so I was riding my push bike into work. And one morning it had started to rain, and a car pulled up well, it was a utility, had like a pickup truck, I think you call them in America. And this guy pulled up, and I recognized him as one of my old school friends. And he said, "Do you want to ride into town?" He said, "I'm going into town. Throw your bike in the back and I'll take you into town." So I said, "Oh, thanks very much." So I got in the car and we started talking about what we were doing nowadays. He said, "So what are you doing with your life now?" And I said, "Well, I go to church fellowship on Friday nights and I'm doing ballroom lessons in town on Wednesday nights. What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going square dancing on Monday nights." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I didn't realize square dancing was still going." He said, yeah, it's a lot of fun. He said, "You should come in." So anyhow, this happened several times, and I could see that I wasn't going to get him off my back unless I went in with him. So I agreed to go in, and he didn't live terribly far from me. So I said to him, "Well, look, I'll come in with you on Monday night, but would you mind taking me in?" I said, "Because I don't have any wheels other than my push bike." He said, yeah. He said, "I'll come and pick you up and take you in." So we went in, and I walked up the steps into the hall, and it wasn't a bit like what I was expecting it to be. I thought it was all going to be corny and hick and that sort of thing. And I don't know that I missed a night after that. I became really hooked on it. And after a short period, this was 1960, this happened. And I think I was 8 at the time, something like that. I wasn't very old. I might have been a little bit older than that.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyhow, I became interested in calling. One of the things that and Hannah and Lars don't believe me when I tell them this, but I used to be very shy, and I still am to an extent, in different ways. And I was so shy, I had difficulty asking a girl to have a dance with me. But with square dancing in Australia back then, we had what we call roundups, which you do something similar as a grand march. Everybody lines up, and boys on one side, girls on the other side, and who appears beside you is your partner for that tip. And this was great for me because I didn't have to ask a girl for a dance. I just go and stand in line, and some poor girl would come along and stand beside me and have to put up with me for the rest of that tip. And I really loved square dancing, and I got interested in calling and bought a few records and started practicing them, and eventually got into calling. So, and it's something that's just continued with me. I was still working as an office machine technician back in those days, and I did for about 15 or 20 years after I started square dancing. And I was manager of one of the departments that we had in our business. And then I found that square dancing was just taking over my life, and I couldn't carry on being a square dance caller and an office machine technician manager. So I decided that I'd do the square dancing because I was enjoying that a lot more than I was going around different offices working on people's equipment. So that's how I got involved with square dancing.
Very good. Yeah. Very much like a lot of us can't
No doubt, yes.
can't do two jobs at once. However, I understand that you had a different kind of a job, and you could explain about this job.
Oh my goodness. I knew I shouldn't have sent these to you. Yeah, that was in New Zealand, and the guy that's trying to undress me is Art Shepherd, the caller who started square dancing off in New Zealand.
yeah.
He'd engaged me to do a weekend for him, and during one of the evening sessions, I decided I'd do this little novelty thing because I'd released a record on full-time caller, I think it was, yellow polka dot bikini. So I thought, well, I might as well wear a yellow polka dot bikini while I'm calling this. So that's what I was doing. And he came out and threatened to take my lower half off. So I was rather concerned at that. That was in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you know, Brian, that everybody took a screenshot now, or?
Oh dear, Michael, I'm worried now.
Those flyers they'll bring people into your dances, no doubt. Good grief. So, what unexpected thing would you say has happened once you started calling and like most of us, you just started calling and it was fun and everything. Did you ever think that you'd be traveling as much or anything else?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
No, I got involved with square dancing, and I was doing quite a lot of traveling. I was doing some traveling around Australia through our various states doing shows, but I got involved with going to New Zealand in the early 1970s because one of those records that I sent to you was an advertising record for one of our national conventions, and it was sent to all of the clubs in Australia and also in New Zealand. And one of the clubs in Auckland asked me if I would go over and call for them. So that started me going over there. And one of the interesting things is when I went to New Zealand, I found out that the name that the Maoris have for white people is Pakeha. Like the white people are called Pakeha. And I'd known this for many, many years. And I was over there again only just recently at Easter time and did a weekend in New Zealand. And while I was there, I met up with a Maori dancer. And we were chatting away, and this Pakeha came up. And I said to him, just as a matter of interest, I said, does Pakeha have a special meaning in Maori? Why do you call white people Pakeha? And he said, oh, yes. He says, it has a very important meaning. And I said, oh, right. I said, what does Pakeha mean? He said, it means good eating.
Jeez. Okay.
So be careful if you go to New Zealand. You might find that you're on the menu.
Yeah. Something about having us for dinner.
That's right.
So what are you not very good at? Something that you would maybe like to improve upon, but
I'm not very good at mathematics. Mathematics is, and because I do progressive squares and some of the other things, people come up to me and they say, oh, you must be very good at mathematics if you can do that sort of stuff. And no, I'm not very good at mathematics at all. I think I'm probably good logically. I've got, a fairly good logic mind, but mathematics is not something that I'm very good at all. And I'm not very good at remembering names. I have trouble remembering people's names, which is not good.
What are you doing to correct that?
Well, I'm not sure that I can do very much about it, but I have developed a technique of talking to people. You can call them by a pet name. You know, how are you going, sweetheart? G'day, mate.
Yeah.
How are you? And things like that. And I'm good at looking at people's badges and getting their names. And if you're not sure, sometimes you can say, look, I always have trouble spelling your surname. How do you spell your surname? And I learned that from my mum because her dad used to do that. If he couldn't remember somebody's name, he said, how do you spell your surname? And they'll spell it. Oh, that's right. Yes, I could never remember whether to get the R first or the D first, you know.
Kind of a dead giveaway if their last name is Jones.
Well, that happened to my grandfather. He was walking down the street and he said to one of his parishioners, I can never remember how to spell your surname. How do you spell your surname? And he said, Smith.
Yeah. It could have been a Y.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, Lordy. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
A superpower.
Yeah, like X-ray vision, the ability to fly, the ability to be invisible.
Well, being invisible could be interesting, I guess. But I think I'd love to be able to stay awake 24 hours a day. That would be.
How about just at 6 in the morning?
Well, I'm trying that. I'm trying that today.
You're seeing how that works.
Yeah,
Well,
indeed.
you know, if you want to find out what you said, you can always watch the YouTube version later.
I might have to.
Do you have a hidden talent, like playing an instrument or, playing your hands? That kind of.
I'm not sure that I'm very good at playing the fool. No, I'm not sure that I probably do have a talent for being able to remember choreography, which is very, very handy being a square dance caller. When I first started calling, I made a rule for myself that because I'd seen a lot of callers reading material while they were calling, and inevitably when they're reading material, they're not paying attention to what's happening out on the floor, so they're either missing the fact that the dancers are making mistakes, or they're not getting the timing right because they're not seeing where the dancers are, because some people take longer to do figures than others do. And so I made a rule for myself that I could read anything that I wanted to read up until the moment I picked up the microphone. Once I had the microphone in my hand, I would not read material again. If I couldn't remember it, I wouldn't call it. I'd go back and I'd research it after I put the microphone down if I needed to, but I wouldn't read it while I was calling. So I never read anything while I'm calling.
Okay.
And I really appreciate being able to do that.
Yeah, I'd say I don't know that it's a hidden talent, but it's a talent. It's only probably hidden to the dancers because, that's not their job to know how we call. So how did you get started to know how to call? Did you just call things that you knew worked to start with?
No, I guess I did. When I first started calling, I was like most callers, just calling what was on the flip side of the record. And then I realized that if you were calling a singing call that had 64 beats in the phrase, you could take the figure from another singing call that had 64 beats in the phrase and transplant it into a different record. So you could call different choreography to the record other than just what was supplied with the record. In most cases, I mean, sometimes the choreography is designed specifically for the music, and it fits the music very, very well. And there's a few dances that I don't change the choreography on because it fits so well to the music. But most of the time, I just put the music on and call whatever it is that I want to call. And now I've, like a lot of experienced callers, like you would be, Joe, you can put the music on and call whatever you want to it because you know where you are in the music. And if you have to run over time because the dancers are not there in time to start the next figure, then you have to backpedal a little bit and fill in before you start. And you never call a grand square unless the dancers are back home ready to start the grand square, because there's nothing worse than being halfway around the set and the caller says sides face grand square and you're not home yet. So I never do that.
Wow. What do you do in your downtime? You got hobbies?
Yeah, I one of my hobbies is associated with square dancing. I work for a guy in America who owns a number of record companies, and he frequently sends me music to be edited. He's bought some of the record labels that would have just died, and he's now re-releasing a lot of those instrumentals. And back in the olden days, you would probably remember that not everything was a 7 times through 64 beats. They had a lot of 72 beats and all this sort of thing. Especially when the records were 78s, they did a lot of different phrasing with the music. So he sends a lot of music over to me and asks me if I will edit it into a 7 times through 64 beats. And I love doing that sort of thing, enjoy doing that. I also have a couple of pet birds. I've got some cockatoos that come in and watch TV with me most nights. They're very friendly, and they come over and they preen my eyebrows and that sort of thing while they're sitting on my chest watching the TV, and we sort of cuddle up together and enjoy each other's company. So I do that. I also used to play tennis and squash quite a lot. I enjoy doing that as well. Yeah. And I enjoy pottering around the garden as well.
Super. Got any childhood memories, like something that you did that was either dangerous, your parents said don't do that, or
Yes, I lived across the road from the beach at a place called Collaroy in the northern suburbs of Sydney, and I spent many hours over on the beach climbing the cliffs, which was really quite dangerous because the cliffs were fairly steep, and also going through the rock pools. And I found it, we have an animal over here, I'm not sure whether it's in other parts of the world as well. It's called a blue-ringed octopus, and they are very dangerous. They're only small, but they're very, very dangerous. And I can remember coming across some of those in rock pools around Collaroy where I would be playing, and we didn't know back then that they were dangerous, but they can kill you within minutes if they bite you. They've got a very potent poison. So yeah, I guess that was dangerous. I would go swimming off the rocks at Collaroy, which is also quite dangerous, I guess. But when you're young, you feel as though you're invincible and nothing is going to hurt you. And I was fortunate that nothing did.
well, we were invincible back in those days. We didn't have germs back then, right?
That's right.
You didn't get a trophy for not winning, I mean, we really roughed it.
Yeah, that's right. You eat all sorts of things that you probably wouldn't eat now.
Dirt, yeah,
Picking up off the ground and eating
Wor-
bits and pieces.
worms. Hey, for boys, it's especially for boys, you you have to check out those worms and see if they have a
Yeah,
flavor.
I did. I ate worms,
Yeah.
and I used to play a lot with the lizards and snakes that we have over here, and that sort of thing, and insects and snails. I had when I was a little kid. I had some pet snails. And do you know the French eat snails? Do
Oh,
you know why the French like eating snails?
I think we're in trouble now.
Yeah, it's because they don't like fast food.
Oh, gee. This is part of the reason I do these Zoom shows, so I have ammunition for my dances. Oh Lord. Uh, used to be, I don't know, do you still party a lot in Australia? We used to, all the festivals, conventions, and weekends, there'd always be parties and always somebody who could tell gazillion jokes. And each person would tell a joke and it would remind you of a joke and it'd go back and forth. So you could do like 3 hours of stand up if you wanted to. Now, do you still do that in Australia at all?
We do. I tell a lot of jokes, but I don't do stand up. I just tell jokes, amongst my friends at parties and things like
Yeah.
that. After a dance, and I think most callers are the same, after you've been calling for a 3 hour dance, it takes you a long time before your mind settles down and you can go to sleep. So I quite enjoy going to a McDonald's or somewhere like that after the dance before going home, just to socialize with some of the dancers and other callers for an hour, have a cup of coffee and some banana bread or something like that before heading off back home again, and then unpack the car and you can go to bed and get sleep. Whereas if you just went straight home, you wouldn't go to bed because your mind would be so active.
That's true. So if you were writing your autobiography, what would the title be?
Well, I like to think of myself as a fun caller. I try to call stuff that's fun. I'm always looking for something that's different. I don't like dancing, and I don't like calling the same old stuff all the time. But I don't want to call stuff that is especially difficult. I want to call stuff that's different but easy for the dancers. So I'd probably pick something like Australia's Fun Caller for the title of the publication.
That sounds good. Have you ever been sued by anybody?
No, not yet. No. Thank you very much. I'm wondering whether he would be interested in contacting me.
You could call it the White House.
Yes, and I'd probably dress like that.
Yes.
Or maybe I wouldn't need to. Maybe I could use the real thing.
Yeah, right. So, do you carry all this stuff with you then?
No, I don't. That was in New Zealand, and you have Hannah and Lars watching at the moment, and they were the ones that very kindly bought that for me in Sweden and gave it to me while I was over there in Sweden, because I've been talking about something like that, and they very kindly got that for me while I was over there. So thank you very much, Mum, Dad.
And it looks like he doesn't have to carry it because he gets carried.
Oh,
It's very good, isn't it? Like it really looks like you're sitting on his shoulders.
Right.
I like that. What's your favorite food?
I think fruit. I enjoy eating fruit. I probably eat more fruit than anything else.
Ice cream.
I was going to say ice cream comes in probably top of the list as well. Hannah and Eva and Lars and I, whenever we get together, we we cannot walk past an ice cream parlor. We've got to call in. Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
I had a banana split for lunch today. What's your favorite book? Have you got a favorite book or a favorite author?
No, not really. I don't read a lot of novel type things. When I was a kid, I used to read Edith Blyton's famous 5 books. I used to enjoy reading those, and I think I read all of those that she wrote. But no, I don't actually get to read a lot of novels or documentaries, that sort of thing. I probably prefer documentaries to fiction. But yeah, no, I don't really do a lot of reading, Joe.
Okay. Well, for anybody that's tuned in late, they're going to think I'm using the wrong language, but when you're sitting at night with your birds watching television, what kind of shows do you watch?
All right. I like watching crime shows. I like watching true crime shows where they're telling you how they actually found out who did it and what the punishment was and that sort of thing. And I also like watching Foyle's War. Is a very interesting series that came out from England that I enjoy watching. I enjoy watching some of the talent shows. Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, shows like that. And I also enjoy watching quiz programs. Once again, there's some programs come from England called The Chase that I watch from time to time. And we have a similar program over here, and there's one called Tipping Point that I watch as well. So I enjoy watching those sort of shows, and they'll sometimes come on at night when I have the cockatoos out, and we'll sit and watch those together. They enjoy those.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you take a vote like with the birds and see what they like.
What would you like to watch? When I watch movies, I prefer to watch the older movies because I don't like a lot of the special effects that they have in new movies. I think the special effects are overdone a lot, and I prefer to watch some of the older movies. I really enjoy watching stuff with Fred Astaire, Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Dean Martin, those sort of things. I enjoy watching dance programs, those sort of things. I like watching, one of my favorite movies, I guess, is Singing in the Rain. Oh. But I also enjoy watching war movies as well. I like Where Eagles Dare, is a very good movie that I enjoy watching. I like action movies. I like watching movies that you can relate to. You can say, well, that could have really happened. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't like watching a lot of the new ones, because the special effects they put in, there's just no way that those things could happen. No. You know, and I think, well, it's not realistic. I prefer to watch something that's realistic.
Well, we're at the point where we need to go to the have you ever? Okay. Have you ever jumped out of an airplane?
No, not an airplane, but I have bungee jumped, which is probably a little similar, where over in New Zealand, they have what they call bungee jumping. You go and they tie your ankles together and put a rope around your ankles, and then you dive off a bridge. And sometimes you land in the water, other times you just bounce up and down after you've done this. And that was scary, but it was fun to do. I'm not sure that I would want to do it again.
So that that's part of what led you to calling square dances, huh? All that
No,
blood
no,
rushing
no.
to your head.
I was encouraged to do it by a square dancer over in New Zealand that I was staying with at the time. He told me that John Jones from America had been over, and he had done it from this bridge only a few weeks before me. So if John's game enough to do it, surely you're game enough to do it. So when I said, yes, all right, okay, I'll do it. So I did it. And then when I walked up the hill after having done the jump, the people that I was with were standing up the top of the hill, and they're laughing at me saying, John wasn't game. He wouldn't do it.
God, I don't think I would do that one.
I
I think I might
was
skip that.
tricked into, no, so I haven't dived out of a plane, but I've dived off a bridge.
Just as good. Just as good. Yeah. Because, jumping out of a plane is usually, parachutes and you got somebody else strapped to you and all.
Yes.
But the bungee, I mean, that's just a rubber band. It could break. Did you thought of that?
I had thought of it, but I looked at the rope, the stretchy rope, and I was convinced that it wasn't about to break. It looked very, very stable.
Okay. Well, have you flown in a hot air balloon?
Yes, I have. We had a convention up at Darwin in 2011, and after the convention, we did a tour down through the centre of Australia, down to Ayers Rock, down to Alice Springs.
Oh, yeah.
And while we were there at Alice Springs, we actually took a hot air balloon ride. Early one morning, went up, and we're up for about an hour, I suppose, in the hot air balloon. It was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yes.
Yep. Do you ever scuba dive?
No, but I have done a lot of snorkeling. I love swimming up around the Great Barrier Reef. I have been on a number of occasions and go swimming around the coral reefs up there. Very interesting. I was swimming one day, and there was this huge school of fish, like thousands of fish, and they were about half a meter long, I suppose. And I swam down towards them, and as I swam towards them, this hole appeared in the fish. So I swam in through this hole where the school of fish was, and it closed up behind me. So I'm in the middle of this school of fish, which was a rather interesting experience. Yeah.
They call them piranhas, don't they?
No, they weren't. They were not piranhas. I think they were probably mullet or something like that.
I'm going to skip the next one. Have you ever told a lie? We're going to skip that one.
Never.
No.
Then there's another one.
Maybe elaborated on the truth of it, maybe. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
So did you ride a motorcycle? Ever have a motorcycle? Or?
I never had a motorcycle, but I have ridden one. My daughter has one, and I have ridden that, but only briefly. I've ridden a push bike a lot. I used to ride a push bike every day into work for about 4 years, I suppose.
What makes it a push bike if you're riding it?
You've got to push on the pedals.
Oh, never thought of that.
You're pushing down on the pedals, see? So that's why it's called a push bike.
No wonder I never caught up with you. I didn't know about that part. Okay, my last question would be, what do you want to be remembered for or as?
Well, I've always been in square dancing for what I could do for the activity, not for what I could get out of it. Square dancing has done a lot for me. It has changed my attitude towards many things. It's brought me out of my shell a lot because, as I said, I was a very, very shy person. And many of the things that I do now, when I first started calling, I would not call a dance that had love me or kiss me or hug me or that sort of thing in it. I just couldn't say that over the microphone. But now I have no no issue at all doing it. But yet I'd probably like to be remembered as somebody that was in square dancing for what they could do for the activity, not for what they could get out of it.
Good answer. Yeah. Yep. Phrased quite nicely. Anybody have any questions for Brian?
Lovely. Thank you.
No. They gotta be coming. Yeah.
While people are maybe thinking of a question, I'd like to tell you a little story. Yes, Hannah. I'm working with Hannah, and in later this year, and I thought I would warn her about this because I was working with another Australian caller a few years ago in New Zealand. We both flew in through Auckland and then went down to Lake Taupo, which is in the middle of the North Island, and we called a weekend together down there. Then I was continuing on down to Wellington, and I was doing some more calling down there for some of the clubs, while this other guy was going home back through Auckland again. So the guy that was running the weekend at Lake Taupo paid this other caller before he left. And he didn't pay me until after I'd been down to Wellington because I was staying with him down there. So when he paid me for doing the weekend, I said, "So did you pay the other caller while you were in Taupo?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "He's already been paid." I said, "All right, good." I said, "Well, don't tell him that you've paid me." So when I went back home again, I was talking to this other guy on the phone. And I said, "Oh, did Pip pay you for doing the weekend over there in Taupo?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "He paid me." I said, "Oh, that's good." I said, "Because that's for the both of us, you know." "Bullshit," he said.
Good to be warned.
I just couldn't resist it.
No, that's good. There's many good callers out there, and it's boring as heck to call with some of them, although they're good callers, but they're not flamboyant on that side of the mic. It's just I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to call with Brian. We have not met in person yet, as
No.
with many of you, but I look forward to the possibility of that happening. We do have the National Convention. We have to call it a festival, Canadian National Festival next year. And as long as you can pay your way, sign up as a registered dancer. Would be glad to. We could pay you in snow. Yeah. Whatever. So.
Well,
Ice cream would go.
Yeah, don't promise things you cannot keep, because what I've heard, there's a lot of fire going on in Canada, so you may not have snow there anymore.
Especially in Alberta, 90 forest fires. We're hundreds of miles away from it, but some days we don't go out because of the smoke. It travels tremendously, so it's not good. But
yeah.
I'm not sure July. Well, there's a lot to be said for the festival. Oh, by the way, if you come, I can promise you, because I'm the program chairman, I can promise you I will give you as equal opportunity to call as anybody else. So Hannah, you have nothing else that we can embarrass Brian with? Oh, I think we can.
No, it's not a question actually, but it's a funny story that Brian once told us when he was talking about the abbreviation and the calling by those shorthands. He also added to the story about the party that he was doing with another caller.
Oh. Is this the one late at night?
Yeah, when he was having a little bit too many of those.
I wasn't there. No.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh,
he wanted to do the abbreviations that you did, only he
yes,
didn't
yes.
remember them as good.
Oh, that was Art Shepherd. That's the guy that was trying to take my bikini off.
Yeah.
He and I had done a weekend in Auckland, and after the weekend, the club took uh, Art and I out to this restaurant, and we had all the dancers from the club, and it was a huge club back in those days. So we booked out the whole restaurant, and there probably would have been, I don't know, 150, 200 dancers had come along to this restaurant with us, and they had a live band in the restaurant. We weren't going to be doing any dancing, and after we'd had the meal, some of the dancers came over and they said, "Look, we got a band here. Is there any chance that we could have a dance? Would you call a dance for us?" And I said, "Well, yeah," I said, "we could probably do that because there was an area where we could dance." And I hadn't been drinking very much. I'm not a big drinker. I'd had maybe a wine or something like that. But anyhow, I went across to Art's table where he was, and I said, "Art," I said, "some of the dancers have asked us to do a dance." I said, "How would you like to do some work with the band?" I said, "I've been over and I had a talk with them, and, they said, yes, they can play the sort of music that we want, the sort of rhythm." So I said, "How about we go up and do a tip together?" And Art had knocked off half a bottle of scotch. So he was a little under the weather. And he said, I don't know if I could call." He said, I've had a few drinks. He said, and you're not supposed to drink and dance for call. And I said, "Yes." I said, "We all know that." I said, "But this is not a regular dance." I said, "Everybody has been drinking. Most people have been drinking." And I said, "I'm sure that the dancers would forgive you if you just got up and called something. They would understand that this is not a regular dance. So how about we do something?" I said, you go and start something. If I feel like I could do it, I'll come over too." So I said, "All right." So I went up and I got the dancers up on the floor and was calling away. And over the weekend, I had done some of that shorthand calling, with the abbreviations. And Art staggered up onto the stage, came around the wall, like this, along to the stage, and came up onto the stage. So I resolved the square and gave him the microphone. And he called, head a couple of squares through 4, meet your corner, and a do-sa-do, make an ocean wave and balance up and back. All the ladies urinate 2 positions.
Aber wenn du die Zwischentür zumachst.
Next morning, we were going out to do some sightseeing, and the car came and picked us up, and we went and picked Art up. And I said, and he was sober again. And I said to Art, I said, "Do you remember what you called last night?" And he said, "I didn't call last night." He said, "I didn't have a call last night. It was a party night." I said, "Yes." I said, "But you got up and called to the live band." No. He said, "I didn't." Anyhow, I reminded him about what he'd called. He said, "No." He said, "I would never, ever say anything like that over the microphone." And his wife was sitting beside him, and she said, "Yes, you did, dear. I was there. I heard you call that." He wasn't about to admit that he'd done it.
It kind of tells you we should not think those thoughts ever, because as soon as you think of some thing to say, it's going to come out, whether you meant it or not. I won't give the circumstances, but I did call. You know how you rent enough granted when you meet Mother Promenade, or rent enough granted when you meet that lady Promenade, and I got the two mixed up.
Yes.
Enough granted when you meet that Mother promenade, which was people, the darn thing is people start snickering and giggling as it sinks in, and it makes it very hard to call again after that. But anyhow, Brian, you showed us a little snippet of what it's like to be inside your head, and I'll tell you right now, it's scary.
Not as scary as it is for me, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that gives me a new question to ask callers. Do you ever want to climb out, Uh,
Well, I have
uh,
appreciated very much this opportunity to share some of my life, some of my ideas, some of my thoughts with you, Joe, and the other people. And I thank everybody else for coming along and joining in with this session this morning. Thank you for those couple of people that have written little bits and pieces to me. I'm sorry I haven't responded, but I've sort of been busy with answering the questions. But I appreciate the little notes that you've written to me while I've been answering the questions from Joe.
Well, Brian, you're not getting off this session without the story I have to tell.
uh-oh.
Good. Love to hear it, Michael.
First of all, I gotta say, from what I hear from my dancers down around here, Germany, in southern Germany, that Brian is a really fun caller. It's fun to dance to him, enjoy the choreo, the wind in the face, but also the chokes. And as he said before, I could sometimes almost thought you were reading my book, but you'd rather lose a good friend than resist to tell a joke, right? A good one. So, but we were doing a dance together. You probably remember in Munich.
Yes.
And we were just talking like we're doing now, and really had a good time and fun time. I think we're talking about some other callers. Al Stevens was a common name we had, and we were enjoying the dance. And then one of my officials walked up, and we had something to clarify. So I talked to him in Bavarian. Yeah, like, das Problem, das machen wir, gell? Ja, es passt schon. Ja, nein, das kriegen wir und alles da. And Brian had a strange look on his face, but we kept going on doing the dance and had a good time. Months later, dancers came back and told me, and it was not only once, but twice or three times they came, and greetings from Brian, but he was quite shocked when you started talking those guttural louds. And I said, it was a language. It's Bavarian. So I guess it must have had an effect on you.
Yes, it did. I can remember I was actually dancing on one of those occasions, and I think you were talking in German or using a few German words, and nobody was responding. I felt like I wanted to laugh the way you were saying things. And I turned to my partner, who was a German lady, and I said, did you understand what he was saying? She said, oh, yes, I understood what he was saying. And I thought, oh, right, okay, it must have been sensible stuff then. It sounded like it was rubbish.
Yeah, it was good.
It was.
Always
very
fun
good.
with you. Always fun.
Okay. Well, I'm going to close off the recording now, but you can stick around and yak if you care to. So again, thanks, Brian, and I'll be sending you a link to the YouTube later.